Unfound is brought to you by the generous listeners at Patreon, PayPal, and YouTube, along with our gracious advertisers. Matthew Wayne Braswell was a 29-year-old from Smithville, Tennessee. He was a self-taught mechanic and lived with his girlfriend. On December 17th, 2021, Matthew and another man were caught stealing from people's mailboxes. During their attempt to escape, the truck wrecked and Matthew ran off. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. As you've heard me say many times before, I never could have guessed there were so many types of disappearances before starting Unfound, with some of them being completely unforeseen. For example, who knew that calling people for rides and then the people not being there when the rides show up was a thing? We've covered 4 of that type at least in the last 6+ years. Another kind is one where people go missing after a chase or crash. Never could have guessed this was also a thing. But I'll give you some names from Unfound's own catalog. Jason Landry, disappeared after a crash, unsolved. Stephen Salazar, committed suicide by jumping off a bridge after a crash, solved. Daniel Villarreal, took off and went missing after a crash, unsolved. Brennan Smokey ran from a vehicle after a police chase, still unfound. Shane Fell crashed, called for a ride, then wasn't there when his brother arrived. Crystal Bailey, a crash followed by her running from EMTs, still missing. And I think there are a few more we've covered. What exactly is going on here? Well, today we get to study and try to understand this phenomenon again with the disappearance of Matthew Braswell. What happens during the car getaway? And now a summary of the case. Matthew's disappearance is not on the Charlie Project, but it is on NAMUS. Matthew Braswell, well, what can I say? You know I don't care about such things. We're here to solve disappearances, no matter how people live their lives. But he made a lot of poor decisions in his life. Matthew became an addict as a teenager and didn't graduate from high school. He tried rehab many times, but it never stuck. The drugs then led him to jail time and warrants, which then kept him from ever maintaining a steady job. Matthew had people who loved him, and I think he loved them too, but he just couldn't stay out of trouble. So, continuing that theme, on December 17th, 2021, Matthew and a guy named Antonio were committing a crime Matthew had done before, stealing checks from people's mailboxes. However, they were caught in the act by a homeowner. Immediately, Antonio, the driver, slammed on the gas in his truck to get away. But the road was slick due to the rain, and the vehicle went out of control and hit some trees. Matthew and Antonio ran off, but Antonio collapsed not even 100 yards away. He was later found to have a collapsed lung and broken ribs. But Matthew escaped. He was never seen again. Searches a few days later yielded only a jacket that authorities believed to be Matthew's. There was blood on it, but the actual amount is unknown to the public. Head injuries, accidents, family or friends hiding these people, the missing people themselves starting new lives elsewhere. All of these theories and more have been postulated as to where these people go. And there aren't many solved of this type that can be used to come to any reliable conclusions. Keep that in mind as you try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, how exactly did Matthew's girlfriend come into possession of his phone after the disappearance? Number 2, would not Matthew's first thought have been to get to his car, which was parked at a friend's house 5 miles away? And number 3, is this disappearance really just one more example that humans have still not mastered the science of searching? Matthew's family is open to all possibilities, but some of the facts point them in a foul play direction. The guest for this episode is Matthew's sister, Amy Braswell. Unfound news. Another week, another couple calls with TV production people. Podcasting isn't tough at all compared to what these people do. Trust me. But we talked about both fiction and nonfiction projects. Hopefully something awesome will happen this year. Next, did you catch yesterday's Dr. Telesco show on her channel on YouTube? I hope you did. We went over the general facts of the University of Idaho massacre, then analyzed what can be learned from the investigation, the media coverage, and the suspect himself. Finally, keep your eyes open for the new Unfound store. Coming soon. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the sister of Matthew Braswell, Amy Braswell. Amy, welcome to Unfound.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's good to have you on this episode, Amy. As listeners know, I speak to all the guests a few times before they are on the program, and that is the case with Amy as well. Amy, let's just start here. You are Matthew's sister. Maybe just want to give kind of a feel for growing up with Matthew. Do you have any other siblings? What can you tell about the home life? The connection between you, Matthew, and if you had any other siblings.
See, I'm a year older, so 2 years older actually. Me and Matt were real close always. It was mostly just the two of us. We had a younger sister, but she grew up with her father. So it was mostly just me and Matt growing up. He's my best friend, still my best friend. He's a good person.
Yeah. So you are older by Matthew by not quite 2 years?
Right at 2 years.
Okay. How do you think you felt about having a sister older than him, maybe so close in age?
We butted heads a lot,
Did
as
you?
any siblings do.
Okay.
Growing up, but.
Uh-huh. So when you say 2 years older, were you like 2 grades ahead of him or just 1 grade, or what was the situation?
I was 2 grades ahead of him.
Okay. All right, and you said you had a younger sister, but she grew up with her father, so you have different fathers?
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of relationship did you know her very well? Did Matthew know her very well?
Yeah. She was 7 years younger than us. She passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh. I'm sorry to hear that.
She was 7 years younger, so she was quite a bit younger than us.
Mm-hmm, right.
We were still close.
Right. Hard to relate to maybe somebody that much younger, especially when the person isn't living with you, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that she passed away. She obviously died very young. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
All right. So you two are close, very close in age. Would you say that you and Matthew have similar personalities, similar social styles, or we're two kind of opposites? What would you say?
We were pretty similar.
Pretty similar.
He
Okay.
was a little wilder than me.
Okay. All right. And okay, that's maybe not all the time, but maybe I think maybe it's just a stereotype that the boys are usually wilder than girls. Of course, it can be the
Yeah.
opposite sometimes. Okay. Well, let's just talk about Matthew in particular. As you growing up with him, being very close in age with him, what was he really into? Interests, hobbies? Was he into like fishing, or was he into cars? What were some of the things that he took an interest in?
Definitely cars. He was always working on a car, or more specifically, the radio system in the car. That was his favorite thing to do. We were younger, bicycles,
Uh huh.
typical stuff, video games. But as he got older, his interest was mostly cars.
Mostly cars. Okay. Did he ever take any like training in that, or was he just like self-taught?
No, it was self-taught.
Okay. All right. What about school? We just brought up a moment ago. You're a couple years ahead of him. Did he graduate from high school? What did he do with his education?
He never graduated.
Okay. Why did that happen, do you think?
He was in trouble quite a bit as a juvenile.
Oh, was
in
he?
and out of juvenile, yeah. So he just never really continued his education.
Okay. Why do you think that was?
Maybe he just lost his way.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Maybe a little bit different than yourself?
I didn't finish high school, but I went back.
Oh, you
got
did?
my GED and
Good
did
for
some
you.
college too. So
Good for you, Amy. Great. Okay, so he had kind of a wild streak in him. Was he into sports? Did he play any sports? Baseball, football, anything like that?
I don't remember him playing sports ever.
No.
Don't think he was too much into it.
Okay. All right. So he's into cars, and unfortunately, as you stated, getting in some trouble, and we can't ignore the fact that this disappearance, it does seem like he was doing something illegal at the time, but we're not going to harp on that too much. We're just going to, just try to figure out what happened to him afterwards.
Right.
What about a relationship with, your mother or father? What kind of relationship did he have with them?
Our father wasn't never around too much. So my mom raised us. We had a good relationship, all of us.
Okay. All right. Is your mother still alive?
Yeah.
Oh, she is. Okay. So Matthew, a little bit of a wild streak into cars, not graduating from high school because he's had problems with the law. And did you ever, being that you two were close, did you ever talk to him about, these problems that he was having? Did you ever ask him, hey, Matthew, you ever going to straighten yourself up? Did you have any talks like that? And what did he say?
Yeah, we had quite a few of those talks. I wasn't perfect either. So we grew up a lot the same way. As we got older, I would talk to him quite a bit. When are you going to stop? It's time to grow up. That's hard-headed in one ear and out the other. So I guess it didn't really help too much.
Right. Maybe even though he's getting in trouble, maybe he was having just a little bit too much fun with it. Maybe. Just kind of a thrill type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, he would do good for a while, then I think that's when he would get bored.
Yeah, that happens. Okay.
He was extremely ADHD too, so I don't know if that's always contributed to his easily bored personality.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And was he living at home all this time? Did he move out? What was he doing? Of course, we have to remember this is a fairly new disappearance just from December of 2021. But, in those teen years into his early 20s, still living at home, or did he move out on his own? What was he doing?
No, he moved out on his own. He lived in Alaska for a couple of years.
Wow.
With her uncle. And he came back from Alaska in, I want to say, 2010-ish. But he stayed out on his own since then.
Okay, went to Alaska. Wow.
Yeah.
Did he like it there? I guess not. He stayed there a couple years, came back.
Well, he said he loved it. Actually, he had some legal problems going on up there as well.
Oh, okay.
So.
I mean, if I'm going to think of a state that's different than Tennessee, Alaska won't be one of them. You know, with all the snow, and I think of Tennessee as being very green and you know, green mountains and things like that. Of course, Alaska, I usually think barren, snow, kind of the opposite. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Freezing snow.
Yeah, right. Okay. Let's move on to this. We've already talked about, you know, some of his legal issues, but what about, you know, once again, not here to talk too much about it, but we have to talk about it. Just about his drug issues. How did they pop up? Why did they pop up? Did he ever try to get help? What is your understanding regarding all of that?
I'm not really sure how or why. He definitely got help quite a few times. He would go to a rehab, or he would go to the sober living, you know, place. It was back and forth. He had just been doing real good not long before he disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're the way, once again, I realize you have your own life to lead. You're not, you know, keeping tabs on him all the time or everything, but is your impression that this problem started as a teenager?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. And so when he went to try to get help, was he doing this on his own, or were people kind of prodding him along? What would you say?
Probably people pushing or court ordered.
Court ordered. Okay. And are these places here right there in Tennessee, or were they somewhere else?
They were all in Tennessee.
All in Tennessee. And I have to ask because we're going to be covering a disappearance here in a few weeks on Unfound, where the guy lived in Massachusetts, but he actually went to rehab in California, which is one of the strangest things I've heard. So I feel like I have to ask that question now, which really caught me off guard. Okay, all right, so let's move on to this. Even though he was having these legal problems, we know that he was in his late 20s when he went missing. Did he have a job? What was he doing with his life right around the time before he went missing?
He had a job at a warehouse, a shoe factory warehouse, I believe it was, and he had ended up quitting. I'm not 100% what he was doing around the time. Like, I hadn't seen him in a couple months before he went missing.
Okay.
You know, so he could have been doing anything.
Okay. Is there a reason you hadn't spoken to him in a couple months, or what?
I had talked to him. I just haven't seen him.
Oh, didn't see him.
Because he moved about an hour away from where I live at.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so you'd talked to him but hadn't seen him in a couple months. And in your opinion, talking to him, how was he doing?
The last time I talked to him, I felt like he was doing pretty bad.
Was he?
He called and asked me for gas money.
All right.
If I could send him gas money, which was odd for Matt. Even on his worst days, he always had money in his pocket. So
okay,
I felt like he was probably struggling.
Okay.
With something.
Right. That sounds like it. I agree with you. Do you think this was, December 16th, December 15th? How many days before this incident with Antonio?
I'm wanting to say the 15th.
All right, so a couple days before. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to a couple people that are going to come up quite prominently when we get to the circumstances of his disappearance. What can you say about Antonio? Just in general, were he and Matthew longtime friends? Did they go? I have to ask, were they like in jail together? How did they even know each other? Do you know anything about that?
As far as I know, they had just met recently, a couple weeks before he disappeared. He had met through Antonio's brother.
Okay.
but that's really all. And I don't know anything about him. Never met him.
Never met him. Never spoke to him.
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. But was he from like the area where Matthew lived, like close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know if Antonio's kind of around Matthew's age, or any ideas?
I believe he is.
He is. Okay.
Close. He's not too far off.
Okay. So, a recent acquaintance of a couple weeks, I guess probably then did not know him that well. In fact, they didn't even meet the two of them. They were kind of introduced through Antonio's brother. And we don't know how Matthew knew Antonio's brother either. Any ideas?
They grew up together. They were friends when they were kids.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember him, but Matt had told me he was hanging out with a friend from back when we were kids.
Okay, very good. So maybe that's the answer there, to connection to Antonio. But this brother on that day was not with them when they were doing what they were doing, right?
No, he's in jail.
Oh, yes. Okay.
He was in jail then.
Okay. Let's move on to this. Who is Kim? This is a woman, it seems Matthew had a relationship with her. What can you say about her? How did they meet? How long were they a couple? What was going on in their relationship at the time of the disappearance? What do you know?
They met through a mutual friend. They had been dating for about 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. They had recently been, the last couple of times I had talked to Matt, he said they were fighting, quite a bit. I don't really know how bad it was, or I just know they weren't getting along.
Okay. Did you know Kim very well?
Yeah, I've known her the whole time he's known her.
Okay, and what do you think of her? Did they make a good couple? What did you think?
They did, sometimes, and then other times he said she was real controlling, and but he may have needed controlling. So
right, that's right. Right.
I can't pick sides.
No, Amy. I think you bring up a fantastic point. We think of controlling as being a bad thing in relationships, but sometimes even adults need a little bit of that. And maybe it could be good for. Of course, it can become very bad, but it could be good too. Especially maybe somebody like Matthew who maybe needed a little guidance. Okay, and did they have any kids together?
No.
No kids. Okay, and
she had 2 kids that he was real close to.
Okay, and did Matthew have any children?
He does. He's got a daughter that's, I'm not sure how old she is, 12 maybe?
Wow, okay. So she would have been like 10 years old when this happened.
Yeah.
When this all happened. Okay. All right, so Kim and Matthew are a couple for 5 years. Certainly a long relationship, especially for people who are in their 20s. And they were living together?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And maybe when was the last time you saw those two together? Maybe did you have a family event or somewhere? How often did you see them together, the two of them?
Oh, it's been a while.
Okay.
It was probably before he went missing, I would say 6-7 months, I think, since I've seen them together.
Quite a while then.
Yeah.
Quite a while. Okay. All right, so they're a couple, and maybe just in general, I'll ask you this. Do you think that Kim was at least while they were a couple, I know you said they had their issues, do you think she was a positive influence on him?
At times.
Okay.
But they had their fair share of getting in trouble together as well.
Okay.
So.
All right, so she had problems with the law too?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on to this. All right, so we have Antonio. We're going to talk about him quite a bit in a little bit, and also with Kim. Just want to kind of set that up for everybody, so when we start mentioning the names, people have an idea who they are. I just have some general questions for you. and it's just because I have to ask these, given it the kind of time of the year. Did you know if Matthew had any plans with Kim or with your family for Christmas? Or maybe I should ask, do you even celebrate Christmas? Did you know any plans of everybody to get together? Did you do something like that? What do you know?
We didn't have any plans. Yeah, we just wasn't talking a whole lot. I think because he was doing what he was doing, and when he was getting those, when he would act like that a lot, getting in trouble, drugs, he would avoid family, especially me. So I wouldn't hear from him unless I almost harassed him. So.
Right. Okay, I got you. So he would just avoid everybody when he was getting in trouble?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. And we have to remember he did call you asking for money not too long before he went missing. That would have been about 10 days before Christmas. Regarding what I realize you have your own life to lead, and I know you're a mother. At least you might have had at least one of your children at the time, the way I'm understanding the ages of them. But so you have your own life to lead, but your understanding of other family members, maybe like your mother. How often was she talking to Matthew? How often was she seeing him regarding around this time, December 2021? Do you even know?
I really don't. Okay. I do not know.
Okay. And I think you said before when you got that call from him, that kind of maybe raised your concern when he's asking you for money?
Yeah, I was a little worried. He never asked me for money.
Right. Do you think, have you found out since then, did he ask anybody else for money? Did he call up or text anybody else around that time asking for money as well?
He did. He asked a friend of his, a mutual friend, Crystal. He called her the same day and asked her for money too. He said for gas.
Wow. Okay. Did she help him out or not?
I think so.
She did. Okay. And maybe I wasn't clear before. Did you give him any money? I guess not. Being that you didn't see him, you did not help him out.
No, I told him I would cash app him money when I got off of work. I was at work when he called, and then when I got off of work and called him back, I never heard anything else from him. Okay.
All right. Let's move on to December 17th, 2021. We, of course, everybody realizes that you were not there. So you got this information, of course, from a witness that we'll talk about, and maybe from a police reporter talking to other people. So we understand that, Amy. But what is your understanding of that day with Matthew and Antonio? And my understanding is they actually started the day at some other guy's house, and then they went on this kind of spree with mailboxes. But I just want... everybody wants to hear it in your words. What do you understand about that day up to the point where Matthew went missing?
From all the information I've been able to gather, Matthew and Antonio were at another guy's house in Chad. They left. They were going to go through these mailboxes. Antonio spoke to my mother a couple days ago, and he told her that was really messed up and that he wasn't able to drive. He said he didn't think he was safe to drive, so he offered to drive him to go, and that's how they ended up together. So they were going through these mailboxes. A neighbor seen them and came out. They took off in the truck, and it was raining. So from what I'm understanding, that's how they wrecked.
Wow.
And then Antonio ends up in the hospital, and Matt disappears.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions about that. Where they were doing this, is this right around where Matthew lived, or was it near where your mother lived, or was it well far away from that, or where was it?
It was close to where Matt lived.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, which is about an hour away from where me and my mom both live.
Okay. So right down the street. So is this also where Kim would have lived at the time?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the name of this road that they were on?
Ponder Road.
Ponder Road. Ponder. And I will be doing a map analysis video for everyone listening that will be on YouTube, so you can understand what we're talking about here as to where this was happening, where the vehicle ended up, and kind of the surrounding area. All right, so they decide, and what are they doing exactly? What are they trying to do by going through these mailboxes? Your understanding, Amy?
Matt would go in mailboxes and look for checks that were being mailed out, and he would get those numbers off of that check and reprint them and have somebody else cash them.
Wow. I guess this sounds like something that Matthew had done before.
Yeah, he had done it. He'd been in trouble for it before.
Okay. All right, so that's why they're doing that. Somebody sees them. They try to get away. They're into this wreck. And what happens after this wreck? My understanding is both of them tried to run, but what happened?
From what Antonio said, the wreck knocked him out. He said Matt woke him up, told him to run, and they both went their separate ways. And then Antonio collapsed. I think they said about 30 yards away, and he said he woke up in the back of an ambulance.
Wow.
But other than the witnesses that seen the wreck, that was, I guess, the last people to see Matt.
Okay. And you have shown me a couple pictures of the vehicle, and of course Antonio was driving, and I would like to show those videos to the audience. They'll be able to find find the pictures. I'd like to show them, the damage. And it was considerable, especially on the driver's side. Not that Antonio has to tell you this, but are you even aware of the injuries that Antonio sustained in that wreck?
I'm not aware. I do believe I've seen a post on Facebook where it said he had a broken ribs and punctured lung, I think.
Wow. Okay, so pretty severe. Of course, we probably have to imagine they weren't wearing their seatbelts, so
Right.
that probably didn't help. All right, so they're in this wreck. Both of them try to run away. This kind of reminds me of the Brennan Smokey disappearance that we covered from a couple years ago. And Antonio says the last time he saw Matthew was running off.
Yeah.
Okay, from this wreck. And in what direction did Antonio state that Matthew was going? Did he say any, like, going north, south, east, west, toward a major road?
He didn't say.
Didn't say. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't say. The sheriff's officer down there said that Matt's jacket was he was going towards the highway, according to where they found his jacket at.
Okay, and a map will be able to share that a little bit better. Just your understanding of where the wreck was to this major road. And what's this major road called again?
Cookville Highway.
Cookville Highway. How far do you think that the wreck was from that highway? A mile? Quarter mile? Couple miles? What do you think?
I don't even think it would be a full mile.
Not even a mile. Very close then. Pretty close.
Close.
Okay.
Close.
Thank you. So, of course, that's December 17th. We know the wreck happened, but my understanding is that your family, of course, given now the way you've explained Matthew's communication habits, maybe with you, with the rest of your family, maybe it's not hard to imagine that they really immediately didn't realize Matthew was missing. Do you remember anything, like, for example, the next day, December 18th, maybe anybody asking you, hey, have you heard from Matthew? Anything curious like that next day at all?
No, nothing.
Nothing. So you had heard from him on the December 15th, and you hadn't heard from him a few days, and just was not on your mind at all?
No, not really. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for us to go a little while without talking.
Right. Had you maybe considered, maybe because it's an hour away, you might not have heard of this, but do you know if anybody had heard of this crash happening?
I do not, and I did go and look at every local news page, Facebook, website.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything about it.
Okay, so it didn't get a lot of play in the media, just the car wreck. One guy is, I guess you could say, caught, and another guy gets away, but at that point, nothing in the media, at least like the next day. So when was it? And even in the outline, and everybody knows, in the audience knows, we use outlines to do these interviews, and Amy has one too. She had a chance to look over it. So what day do you think it was then that your family was alerted to Matthew being actually missing, not just out of touch with people, but actually missing? Was it December 19th, 20th? What's your best guess on the date?
I'm going to go with the 19th. I believe it was maybe the 20th. I think it was the 19th, though.
All right, just a couple days later. And who does this, and how does she go about doing it?
Kim texted me while I was at work and said that Matt was missing. And I wasn't allowed to bring my phone into work, so I didn't see it till maybe 2 hours later at lunch. That's when I called her. I'm like, what do you mean Matt's missing? Did Matt just take off for a little while, or is he missing? And that's when she told me about the wreck.
Mm-hmm. And when you heard that, and of course, did she make it clear in the statement that Matthew hadn't come home or anything? Did she make it clear that she hadn't seen him?
Yeah.
Okay. How concerned were you at that point? Is this something that was, of course, we know Matthew's having problems with the law. Anything like this ever happen again where he was getting chased and maybe disappeared for a few days?
For a few days, it wasn't really a red flag to me. Honestly, at first, I didn't really think there was a problem.
Okay.
I thought, if anything, maybe he went home and had just told Kim not to tell anybody that she had seen him.
Okay, that's common. That's common. Somebody gets in trouble, they're asking their significant other, "Hey, I did this. Don't, that's where I was. Don't tell on me." Very common, both for men and women. I think you make a very good point there, Amy. At that point that she texted you, though, had she alerted the police yet, or who ended up doing that?
She ended up doing that, and it wasn't until maybe another day later, I think, because she asked me, should she file a missing persons report, and I finally told her, yeah, this isn't like Matt. Somebody would have heard from him, seen him. Okay. By now, somebody would have seen him. And nobody had seen him, so she decided to go do the missing persons report. And I think that next day is when they went out and did the search of the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they went and searched roughly December 20th?
Somewhere around in there.
All right, so this all happened, I guess, fairly quickly then. This wreck happens on December 17th, and already by the 20th, 21st, there's people out there searching.
Yeah.
Okay. When you spoke, she texted you, did Kim sound concerned? Did she ever say, well, you know what, he hasn't come home, so I think he might have gone here, he might have gone there? Did she, what was her attitude? What were her words?
She did sound concerned. She told me she was going to all the places she knew of that he hung out at, and nobody had seen him. And that's when she got real concerned. This is what she told me. But when that's why I got real concerned, when I found out none of his friends had seen him or spoken to him either.
Mm-hmm. And so once you found out about this, for example, did you call some of his friends?
I did not. I didn't know anybody out in that area.
Okay.
And I was pretty sure he wasn't going to come to the area where I live at, because he did have warrants for his arrest, so he didn't really come out here.
Okay. And like you said, you lived about an hour away.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you the one put in charge of telling your mother?
Yeah.
Okay. How did she react to this?
She didn't react to it well. She was very upset. She still is.
Yeah, of course. All right. So Kim, a couple days later, she gives it a couple days. Any idea how she even found out about this wreck? Do we even know how it got from the wreck happening to Kim finding out? Did she even know about the wreck?
I still haven't figured out how she knew about the wreck. Yeah, she doesn't speak to me now. So questions that I have now, I can't really get answers to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how she knew.
Okay. So, yeah, we have to understand that Matthew's out there with Antonio at this other guy's house. They go out and do this. They go missing. But then something goes on. And somehow she finds out. Right? And we don't know if maybe the girlfriend of Antonio told her. Maybe... somebody knew about the wreck and told her, maybe knew that they were together. Maybe this guy that we're going to talk about a little later, his name's Chad Taylor. Maybe he let her know. We just don't know. A lot of different possibilities, though, correct?
Right.
A lot of different possibilities. Okay, but we just don't know that. And we'll get into, a little bit later, maybe why you and she don't speak anymore. So the police go out there with other people, not all police, but maybe other people. They do these searches. Were you there? Was anybody in your family there? Do you know how much area they covered? What can you say about the searches?
Nobody in the family was there. I was at work. We live two different lives. So, I still had to be moved, even though this was going on. They had multiple counties, sheriff's departments out there, Tennessee Highway Patrol, I think, contributed. They had dogs, cadaver dogs, helicopters, and I'm not sure how much area they searched. All I know is that they didn't find anything except a jacket.
All right, we're going to talk about you've already mentioned it before. We're going to talk about it specifically here in a moment. I realize you weren't there, but as best as you can tell, do you think that they got a lot of assistance from the landowners out? And there's, of course, a lot of private property out in this area, about on these back roads. Did you happen to hear where there's some landowners that didn't want any searchers on their land? Have you ever heard anything like that since Matthew went missing?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I've talked to the detective quite a few times, and he never mentioned that there was, landowners that didn't want them there or anything. So I don't really know.
Right. And how would you explain this area as far as, is there a lot of woods, a lot of open spaces, any rivers nearby? What can you tell the listeners about this area?
There's lakes, a big lake at the end of the road, like all the way at the dead end of the road. It's like a cliff. There's a lake down there, and it runs up kind of both sides of the area, but not like right behind the houses. So, it's not real close. I was under the impression that it was a lot of woods, but when I actually went out there myself, there was quite a bit of open fields before you got to the woods. So it's just weird that nobody could see which way he was running if he was running through an open field. Right,
and that's a very good point. And maybe I should have asked you this regarding the truck. So he lost control. Did they, your understanding, did they actually hit a tree like that was near the road, or did they roll it over? Or it's kind of hard to tell from the pictures. Do you know?
I do not know 100%. I think they hit the tree. I'm pretty sure Antonio had said that they were hydroplaning, and he turned it, and the driver's side hit like a row of trees.
Yeah. Okay. So there were some trees there that were along the road, but like you just said, you would not consider this area to be heavily forested.
Not immediately behind, like by the road.
Okay.
Now on back some, yeah. But like immediately by the road, around the houses, it was pretty open.
Okay, very good. So they did these searches. Do you know, being that you mentioned this lake, do you know if the lake was searched?
It was not.
It was not. Okay. Any drones used? Any, you said dogs, people on ATVs, or just people on foot? Any ideas?
I have no idea. I do know they did use drones.
Okay.
With the infrared, I think they said looking for body heat in case it was still out there.
Yep. We've talked about that before on Unfound. Okay. Let's move on to this. Some of the rest of the points of this disappearance. So he runs off. A lot of different possibilities. We don't do any theorizing on Unfound, but I think people can see that there's, of course, a lot of possibilities of where Matthew could have gone. Could have gotten picked up, could have run off, somewhere, something in between, could have ended up bunch of different places. But you mentioned this jacket, and it was found during the search. And I'll just start here. Have you seen the jacket?
I have not.
Never been shown to you, picture, nothing?
No.
Huh. Okay. Then I got to ask, how can investigators then be sure that it is actually Matthew's jacket and not somebody else's?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right. You're being honest. Thank you very much. These are why I ask these questions. We say it's Matthew's jacket, but you knew Matthew fairly well. You've never seen a jacket. Do you know if your mother has ever seen the jacket?
No.
She hasn't seen it either.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Kim did say, I think that they described the jacket to her, and she said it was his jacket.
Okay, well that would...
Not 100%.
All right, well that would certainly be somebody who would know, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay. Has the jacket ever been described to you? Blue jean jacket, winter jacket, pullover. Do you even know what kind it is?
I think Kim said it was a gray, winter jacket.
Gray winter jacket. Okay. Now, we've also talked about in a prior conversation, Amy, that there was blood on it. Have you ever been told how big of a mark of blood? Like size of a dime, size of a quarter, size of a paper plate? Any ideas?
I was never told. I was just told that there was a small amount of blood on the jacket.
Wow. Well, that maybe should not be a surprise, maybe after a car wreck, especially if they weren't wearing their seatbelts. Okay.
Right.
Where was this jacket found in relation to the wrecked car or wrecked truck?
It was between the wreck and the highway, closer to the highway.
Okay, so
that the detective told me.
All right, that Colville highway that we've already spoken about.
Yeah.
All right, so it's in that direction, and it goes back to what you said that, maybe Antonio thought that is the way that he was running, so maybe that all ends up being tied together. On this particular day, we know it's December, we know it's Tennessee. How cold was it out that day? Do you even remember?
It was pretty cold. I remember it was raining also.
Right, that's why the wreck happened. Okay, so he's running. If it's his jacket, takes it off. Maybe thinks he can run faster without it. We can, do a lot of theorizing there. All right, so this jacket is found. I guess it's still in evidence.
As far as I know, it is.
Okay, so we got this jacket, but nothing else of Matthew's ever found. Any shoes, a hat. We'll talk about this phone in a second. No electronics, anything like that.
No, nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Let's talk about Matthew's phone. This is where things, I don't know. I think to this point, everything has been pretty straightforward as far as disappearances go. It's very sad. I, of course, want Matthew to be found alive today, tomorrow at the latest. But it's been in my world, pretty straightforward to this point. But this is where it gets, I would say, some more question marks start to pop up. Matthew's phone. Now, what was your understanding at the time? I guess I should ask you this. When Kim contacted you, did she ever say anything, the first time, did she ever say anything about Matthew's phone?
Yeah, when she first told me he was missing, she told me she had tracked his phone through the Find My iPhone and that it was at a tow lot. And that was really all she had said about his phone. And a couple days later is when she told me she had his phone.
Okay, so let's just delve a little deeper into that. So Matthew has an iPhone. I do not have an iPhone, so although we've talked about this particular app, I think, on Unfound maybe a couple times before, but not too much. But when he's missing, she uses that app, and it seems, the way she explained it, that, I guess what you're saying, are you saying, Amy, that the phone was still in the wrecked truck?
Yeah.
That's what she
said.
said.
From my understanding.
Okay. All right, so I guess that means that Matthew, when he ran off, didn't take it.
Right.
Okay, so, all right, and we'll get back. We're going to get to this then. I want to talk about now, so that's what she said initially, and we'll come back to what she said a couple days later in a little bit. But let's move on to, I think you first told me it was a woman named Cheyenne, but then you discovered it was maybe somebody else named, a woman named Brittany. Who are these two? Before we get into their connection to all of this, who are these two women?
Cheyenne was Chad Taylor's girlfriend. She also was friends with Matt, I think, for a short period of time.
Okay.
Before the disappearance. The Brittany girl, I have no idea who she is.
No idea. No. We're not going to get into last names here, but you know Cheyenne's last name?
No.
You don't know? Okay, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine.
I know it, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
That's fine. We're not going to worry about that. But Brittany, you just have no idea who she is. Nobody's ever explained to you who this woman is at all.
No.
Don't
just
know if
she
she's
was
like
a friend of Cheyenne's.
A friend of Cheyenne. She could be a relative of Antonio's, a relative of Chad's. Could be anybody.
Could be anybody. Yeah.
Could be anybody. Okay. But there's a story, and this is where we come back to talking about Kim again regarding this phone. What did Kim tell you a couple days later? So the phone seemingly was in the truck, but then a couple of days later, it wasn't. Why?
She told me that Cheyenne had jumped the fence at the tow yard to get other stuff out of Antonio's truck, and that she got Matt's phone. And then later on, just a few days ago, I was informed that it was not Cheyenne that jumped the fence, that it was another girl, the Brittany, jumped the fence and went in the tow yard, and she got, whatever all she got out of the truck, and then Cheyenne got the phone from her and gave it to Kim.
All right, so I guess then we're supposed to believe, I guess it's possible that there's this wreck. There's a witness, calls 911, police show up, Antonio's there, he gets taken to the hospital. Matthew's not there, but Matthew's phone is still in the car. But then when the vehicle gets taken away, seemingly nobody bothers to go through the vehicle to look for any identification, any phones, for anything to try to investigate these crimes.
From my understanding, yeah, they didn't search that vehicle at all, the police-wise.
Okay. Do you know what tow yard it was where this vehicle is? I know you have pictures that you sent me. Do you know what tow yard it is?
I do not, and Antonio said he didn't remember.
Okay. I don't know if we're supposed to believe that,
yeah,
but
I know.
Okay, all right, but that's and I appreciate you saying you don't know. There's nothing more I appreciate on Unfound when somebody just says, you know what, I don't know. That's better than trying to guess. So
yeah, there's a lot I don't know. So
that's fine, and probably because maybe people don't want you to know. Maybe
right.
Kim, Antonio, and others. I mean, the guy didn't know where his vehicle was after it got to that. That doesn't sound plausible to me. But all right, so we got to go with this story that Cheyenne / Brittany found out about. Do you think? I'm guessing. Is it your impression that if this happened, that was not really the reason they went to the truck into this tow yard? It was not to get Matthew's phone. It was maybe to get other things.
Yeah, it was to get other stuff out of the truck, and his phone just happened to be.
Okay, that is your belief.
There.
That's your belief.
No, that's not my belief.
That's the proof. That's true. That's 100% true.
I just don't know about any of it that his phone was ever in the truck, or I don't see anybody jumping a fence at a tow yard and not getting caught.
Well, I agree with you. That's no, Amy, I agree with you. But I guess once again though, if we're to believe that this happened, I guess what we're saying is if it happened, the motivation was probably not Matthew's phone to go in that tow yard. It might have been to get something else. Okay.
Right. Sorry.
It'll be up to the listeners to determine whether they believe all of this, but that's the story.
Gotcha.
All right. And to your knowledge, being that it's out there, and of course Unfound as public as you can get, but it seems like the story has been out there. Do you know if Cheyenne or Brittany have ever been charged on trespassing or anything regarding what they allegedly did?
Not as far as I know.
Okay. All right. So then, a few days later, like we've already said, then Kim has the phone. But here's the big question: has she? What has she done with the phone? Has she ever sent you a picture of it? Did she turn it into police? Do you know anything about what Kim did with Matthew's phone?
No. She told police she didn't have it. She refused to give it up to me, our mom, anybody. The police were sent, the detective was sent multiple screenshots and video recordings of her saying she had the phone, and they never investigated it any farther.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Did she give any, once again, I realize you talked to her, but you don't have any contact with her. When you did speak to her and you found out that she had Matthew's phone, did you ask her for it?
I did not at the time. I did maybe 6 months after he went missing. I asked her for the phone, and she never responded to me after that. She hasn't responded to me since.
Okay. All right, so she says she has the phone, not giving it to the police, not giving you even a picture of it to prove maybe that, yes, she has the phone, not giving any numbers of off the phone to anybody. Maybe we can imagine a lot of reasons for that. But being that you just mentioned that about losing, we've talked about you lost contact with her. Any insight on why at the beginning, here you two, trading texts and calls about Matthew's disappearance, and then it all went cold? Any insight, your opinion on it?
I don't really know. I don't know what happened. Like I said, we talked every day about it for a while, and then I realized she deleted, they had a shared Facebook page, and she deleted that, and then she just kind of stopped talking to me or my mom or anybody else about it.
Okay, so she has no contact with anybody in your family at all?
No.
Okay. What has she done with her life since December of 2021?
I don't really know.
You don't know?
No.
Don't hear anything through the grapevine about her moving anywhere, anything? No,
I know she still lives in the same place.
Okay.
She's gotten back in a relationship with her ex-husband. Besides that, that's really all I know.
Okay. Do you know when these searches were being done, did she go out there and try to assist in any way?
I do not know. She told me that her and Chad went out there and looked for him the night of the wreck. They went out there and looked themselves, but I don't know if she was there when the police did a search.
Okay, maybe that could lead us back to the idea maybe she found out about the wreck through Chad. And we're going to get to Chad here in a moment. Could be. All right, let's just talk about Chad a little bit. And because we really haven't talked about Matthew's car yet, we'll get to that in a moment. But who is Chad Taylor? We know about Antonio, we know about Kim, we know about Chan, we know about Cheyenne, we know about Brittany. But it seems like this all started at Chad's house. Who is he? How did Matthew know him? How did Antonio know him?
I'm not sure how Antonio knew him. Kim told me Chad was Matt's friend that he would go and stay with when they were fighting. So that I was under the impression that's who Chad was. Chad just told me himself maybe a week ago that he had just met Matt the day that he disappeared. He said he had just met him.
Huh.
So, yeah, I don't know who's lying there.
Right. Okay. But it should be noted, one thing we haven't talked about is that actually Matthew had a car. Where was his car on the day this all happened?
He left it at Chad's house when he left with Antonio in his truck.
Okay. Did you ever get that? Did your family get the car back? What happened to the car? Did anybody look it over for any sort of evidence?
Kim picked it up from Chad's house and nobody ever seen it again, as far as I know. I think she sold it.
Okay. And she could do that because it was in her name?
I don't know for sure that it was, but probably.
Okay.
Matt usually would put his cars and stuff in her name.
Okay. Now, if she went and picked up the car, that mean I guess she had a set of keys for it.
I guess you would think, but Matt never left. He never left his keys anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another red flag to me.
Okay. Amy, I brought this for the audience. I brought this up to Amy. One of the times we spoke is that, I have a Hyundai Sonata, a 2016, and I think, my perception is when you buy a car new, you might get a couple. Of course, these days it's probably going to be like a fob or a button or something. And do cars even have keys anymore? But when you get a used car, sometimes you get two sets of keys, and a lot of times you only get one set. I only have one set of keys for my car, so if I were to ever lose my key, I would be screwed. Do we know for Matthew's car if he had more than one set of keys for that car?
I do not know.
No idea. Okay.
No.
So the car's there, she comes and gets it and sells it, and that was that.
Well, she held on to it for a while, I think, after he went missing. But I'm pretty sure she sold it eventually.
Okay. Do you know, I guess you've told me just in this conversation, you spoke to Antonio decently recently. You spoke to Chad Taylor decently recently. I didn't mean to rhyme there. And I think that's very positive. I don't know if they're telling you the truth, but it's good that you have an open dialogue with them. Do you know if either of them still speak with Kim? Did her name come up during those conversations?
No, I didn't actually speak to Antonio. My mom is the one that's been talking to him.
Okay.
Chad hasn't. He never brought Kim up anymore.
No.
No, he just said she was a liar. Was the last thing he said to me. I've still been waiting for him to call, like he promised. Okay. And he hasn't called yet, but we've messaged back and forth.
Okay. Why do you? We of course none of us got to hear that conversation. Why do you think he called Kim a liar?
Because I asked him. I told him I just had a couple of questions about Matt. How long they known each other and all that, and I said, Kim said that he used to stay with you when they were fighting, this and that. And he said Kim is a liar. I just met Matt the day that he was in that wreck. He said Kim is definitely a liar.
Okay.
So he said I'll have to call you to explain, but I'm busy right now, I think is what he said. And I was like, okay, just call me when you get a chance. And I've been reminding him every couple of days, hey, please call, but no call yet.
Okay. Maybe and we have one more thing to talk about Matthew and Kim, but I want to ask you this. Your understanding, I realize you didn't live in the area, you lived an hour away, but how far away did Kim live? Of course, we know Matthew was living with her. How far is that from the wreck site to where Kim and Matthew were living at the time? Just roughly, how long would it take to... You don't have to do running, of course, but driving. How long do you think it would take to drive?
To drive, maybe 5 minutes.
Not far. Pretty close.
No, about 5 miles away.
5 miles, okay. And what about Chad? Do you even know where he lives, and how long would it have taken for Matthew to get to his house from the wreck site?
I'm not 100% sure on that. Okay. I know he lived in the same town. I don't know how far or exactly where he lived.
Okay, so they live in the same town, so maybe it could be approximately the same amount of time. Maybe 5 miles, 6 miles.
Yeah.
Maybe take an hour and a half to walk it, maybe.
Yeah.
Because the reason I ask for the audience is it makes sense that if Matthew's trying to get away from the police, I think the first place that he would go is where his car was. That would that makes a lot of sense. That doesn't mean that he did it, but something we need to consider. Matthew's stuff. We know Key and Kim lived together. They were together for 5 years. I've never had a relationship that lasted that long, but we know that a lot of stuff gets mixed in together. People leaving, clothes and things. have you ever gotten any, or your mother, ever gotten any of Matthew's stuff back from Kim?
No, nothing.
Have you or your mother ever asked for it?
I did not. At first, I did not. I did later on ask for some of his stuff, but there was never any response about that either.
Okay. All right. Any sightings of being that we know that he ran off, he went somewhere. Any alleged sightings of him around that time? We get that sometimes in disappearances, people seemingly walking away. Somebody will say, oh yeah, I saw that person. Have you ever heard any stories like that? Anybody seeing Matthew on the road that evening, that night?
No, I haven't.
Zero. None. Okay. I have this on my notes, and I just maybe need to explain to you and the audience right at the same time. Have you tried to, it's fairly early, but I do know in a disappearance we're going to be covering within the next few weeks, can never make predictions like this, another very recent disappearance where a family has already gotten quite a sizable report from police, and it was like 80 some pages, even though the disappearance is not that old. Have you attempted to do that yet? It seems like you're talking to the police, but have you ever filed the official paperwork to get the entire file on Matthew's disappearance, the investigation into his disappearance?
I mailed it in and never received a response, so I'm going to call the sheriff's department and ask for it.
Yeah, you got to do that. I think that's very important, Amy, even for a disappearance that is this new. I would usually be a negative on that, but this other disappearance that we'll be covering is very new, and I would not think that the people would be able to get anything, and they did. So that's why I had it in my notes in the outline that I sent to you, just kind of combined some information there. But I think that's great that you did that, and I want you to keep me posted on that because they're supposed to get back to you within so many days.
Yeah, it said 7 days on the website. It's definitely been past 7 days.
Okay. Yeah, you got to get on them for that, for sure. And you let me know how it goes. And of course, we're doing this interview on January 21st, 2023. This is going to come out January 27th, 2023. So if you do speak to the police between now and when the episode comes out, you let me know. And you know what they say about this FOIA situation. Okay. Let's move on to this. How hard has this been for you, for your mother, Amy?
It's been horrible. Just to know every day that we don't know, like we don't know. Mm-hmm. Is he out there? Is he not out there? We just have no answers, and it's hard, especially considering he was, just because we didn't talk as much. Every now and then, he was still my best friend.
Mm-hmm. When you've spoken to police, of course, this vehicle got towed away. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this vehicle up close, but any idea what kind of, if that was his jacket with the blood on it, any idea what kind of injuries he could have suffered in this wreck? Has anybody been able to tell you that?
The detective told me that the windshield was busted on the passenger side. I think he said, yeah. So he feels like Matt probably had a little bit of injuries, at least to the face or head area.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
But from the pictures, the passenger side of the truck doesn't look nowhere near as bad as the driver's side.
I agree with you. At least from the pictures that you sent me, I agree with you that the driver's side certainly took the brunt of the impact for sure. But I'm guessing that you never thought you'd be doing something like this, right? Of course, you knew that your brother had some problems with the law here and there, but I don't think you could have ever predicted anything like this, right?
No, never.
No, you kind of have to wing it, right? You don't. You have to try to figure this out. There's no textbook, and a lot of people said I should, put one out there, but no textbook to go by doing all of this, right? Yeah. And of course, you're a mother as well. You have 2 kids, right? Very young.
Yes. Yes.
Very, very young kids, yeah, who took part in one of our conversations, as I remember, which was fun. Uh, yeah, that was really fun with doing that. I don't have any kids, but I do love kids. Maybe talk, being that she's not being interviewed today, maybe you can talk a little bit about your mother and how she has handled the past, year and a month.
She's been struggling. Her son's out there somewhere or not. So she's struggling with it quite a bit too. We don't talk about it a whole lot just because I don't want to talk about it every day. I don't.
Yeah.
I can't. If I'm going to make it through it, I can't sit and talk about it every day. So I know she's going through it pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, if
it's
you're...
hard on everybody.
Right. That's... Amy, and you shouldn't feel guilty about that. If you talk to your mother and you talk about anything but that, you shouldn't feel guilty about that. You do have your own lives to lead. I think you're doing, great work here, especially for a newer disappearance, where new information is popping up all the time, and you have your own life to lead. You have children who need you, and, if you're having a good day doing whatever you're doing with your life, there's no need to that get in the way all the time with Matthew's disappearance. Okay, that's not fair to you. So I just want you to always remember it. Whatever you're doing right now is plenty. So never feel guilty about that. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have a Facebook page or a website, anything like that set up for Matthew's disappearance? If so, please give it out right now.
We do. It's the name of the Facebook page is Matthew Braswell Missing Person.
Okay.
And I think there's another one, Help Find Matthew Braswell. One of them is a private page, a group.
Okay.
Mostly family.
Yeah.
But you can find the other one on Facebook.
Why don't you say the public page again? Give it the title again, please.
Matthew Braswell Missing Person. Or Missing Person Matthew Braswell.
Okay. And the last name is Braswell. Now, are you an administrator on there?
I am not. My aunt and another family member.
Okay, good.
Is.
Okay, good. I always have to ask that because sometimes some of these pages are run by strangers, and you never know what you're going to run into. My experience when dealing with some of them, but it's good to know a family member is running the page.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. Amy, any final words before we complete this interview?
Just if anybody is listening to this knows anything, just let us know. Let somebody know.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to know what happened.
Right. And maybe you should say what police department is responsible for his disappearance right now.
DeKalb County Sheriff's Department in Tennessee.
Okay. All right, very good. Amy, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And that was my January 21st, 2023 interview with Amy Braswell, sister of Matthew Braswell. I thank her for appearing on this episode. As stated in the interview, I've produced a video detailing the locations for this case. You can find it right now on Unfound's YouTube channel. My analysis starts here. The issue that makes trying to figure out what happened to Matthew Braswell very difficult is that even within this category of people leaving or running off after a crash or chase, the range of them is very wide. To illustrate this, I'll go back to the list I mentioned in the opening. Jason Landry disappeared after a crash, unsolved. Steven Salazar committed suicide by jumping off a bridge after a crash, solved. Daniel Villarreal took off and went missing after a crash, unsolved. Brennan Smokey ran from a vehicle after a police chase, still Unfound. Shane fell, crashed, called for a ride, then wasn't there when his brother arrived. Crystal Bailey. A crash followed by her running from EMTs. Still missing. Despite all of them being generally the same, none of them are exactly the same. In fact, some of them have nothing in common, other than people going missing after a chase or crash. For example, Steven Salazar was driving and absolutely committed suicide all on his own. That's an Unfound Now episode, by the way, not a podcast one. He wasn't being chased, seemingly decided to jump from the bridge in a split second. But his is solved. His remains were found. Whereas Brennan Smokey wasn't driving. The car he was in was being chased. It didn't wreck. Thus, he did not suffer any injuries. And nobody thinks he was suicidal. But his is unsolved. Yes, an argument could be made that Matthew's disappearance is kind of like Brennan's, both having troubled pasts, both doing illegal things on the day of their disappearances. That's why Brennan and his buddies got chased by the police that day. And yes, it's true, there were no police behind Matthew that day, but surely the reason he ran is because he thought the police were on their way, which they were. However, Brennan suffered no injuries, whereas it seems Matthew did, although we are not sure to what extent, if the coat is his. Then maybe Matthew's running off should be compared to Jason Landry's disappearance. That is also an Unfound Now episode on YouTube and not a podcast episode. Despite no one really believing the cops were after Jason. The two of them might have had injuries from their crashes that eventually became terminal. In addition, both disappeared in areas that seemed to be easy to search, but both are still missing. The problem? Matthew and the people around him were shady. Thus, it's possible they could have covered up Matthew's death or could be hiding him to this day. The phone story itself could point us in a myriad of directions. Whereas with Jason, he and the people around him were certainly different than Matthew. And I could go on. So all of you have a lot to analyze. The really tough part? Because these types of disappearances seem to be common, that means we'll never probably get away from them. If you'd like my deeper analysis, culminating in what I think happened to Matthew Braswell, please sign up at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast and listen to or read the Unfound blog. I'll leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.